Hello, welcome to Mr. Snail's Wild Ride. I am Mr. Snayl, and the wild ride, as always, is my life so far. There's a term called central coherence, which refers to an individual's ability to integrate individual perceptions into a larger context. That's a fancy way of saying, see the big picture. People on the autism spectrum usually can describe in great detail interesting patterns in bark on an individual tree. And then they'll go from one tree to the tree that's right next to that one, and then to the tree that's right next to that one, without really ever realizing that they're describing sort of a whole series of trees that are all sort of near one another, making up a whole group of trees. Now, what's the term for a group of trees? Well, it doesn't matter. Anyway, so you can see how this kind of difference in perspective might cause some friction in relationships, perhaps. One of the many benefits among people with Aspergers Syndrome, that's the outdated term. I should use the DSM-5 definition. Hold on. Autism Spectrum Disorder, severity level 1 or level 2, without accompanying intellectual impairment. So, one positive trait among us is this ability to focus on details. It allows us to doggedly pursue ideas despite any evidence to the contrary. And since we follow rules dependably, it makes us really great members of like a science lab, for example. Especially if there's a strong leader and if we're allowed to work late into the evening by ourselves, for example. Of course, unfortunately, those same traits tend to make us weak leaders ourselves because we're usually leading teams made up mostly of neurotypical people. When I was a kid, I used to say that I would make a fantastic first officer, but a lousy captain. Of course, that was usually in a Star Trek context, but I digress. So what spectrumites and neurotypicals regularly butt heads over is this idea of the forest versus the trees. Conceptual versus literal, details versus generalities, micro versus macro, and so on. Of course, this is one of many ways that severely impacts our communication with neurotypicals, and I'm sure was a major contributing factor to my own personal inability to finish my graduate thesis. Before I was diagnosed, my wife and I found ourselves in frequent heated arguments over basically nothing. So I can give you one example. We figured out over time that there were two stages to what would happen. So first, something significant would happen to my wife that she would want to share with me. And I wouldn't really get it the way that she wanted me to understand. Or at best, I would only really get a portion of the whole tale. And she would realize this, and she would get frustrated and confused. She'd think, like, he's smart. Why is he confused by this story? So she'd try again and still fail. So then we would enter the second stage, where it would start to get heated. She would try to break it down and explain like a single aspect of the story and illustrate with examples. And if I didn't get it, she would try a different example. Then I would claim that she was changing the subject to win the argument, because at this point we were fighting, basically. And this would go on for varying lengths of time, and the end result would be my wife is crying and I am confused and angry. And this was actually a situation that never really got resolved until after I was diagnosed. So we figured out that each significant experience that she'd wanted to share with me was some kind of new discovery or a new realization or awareness that she had come to about herself. And each time this new thing was a conceptual experience. And it wasn't that I didn't want to get it. I wanted to share in that with her. But my brain isn't wired in such a way so as to allow me to experience it, this conceptual thing, at least not the way she does. So the resolution to this conflict was entirely my wife's doing. I can't take any credit for it at all. she just came up with a whole new plan for how to deal with it. She takes the sharing of her significant experience elsewhere, to other friends, other neurotypical people. If it's really important and she wants to share it with me, then she waits until I'm rested, fed, in a decent mood, and not otherwise engaged in something really absorbing. Then she just takes my reaction, whatever it is, and she anticipates it not being very enthusiastic. She sets her expectations really low. Now, sometimes my reaction might be more enthusiastic later, but just knowing going in what to expect helps her. As I've said, it's an ever-evolving process for both of us. But knowing what the deal is, we hardly ever fight anymore. That's a great relief for both of us. So any tips, tricks, or questions about life on the spectrum, hit me up. Use the hashtag AutisticSnayl. Don't forget to subscribe. New episodes every Thursday. Enjoy your autumn, such as it is, wherever you are. Thanks for tubing in. We'll see you next time. There's a term known as central coherence, which refers to an ability, an ability's individual to integrate, was a was some kind of I'm a cool guy. Just look at me. So what's spectrumites? Enjoy your autumn. We'll see you next time. What was that? Now, sometimes my reaction might be, hit me up. I don't know, then what? A discovery or a new awareness that she had. Yeah, that was it.